Welcome to Season 2 of the Strain Podcast, a Southgate Media Group production, where we talk all about Guillermo del Toro's horror fantasy series, The Strain. We are currently covering the series' second season on FX. I'm your host, Blaire and Graves, Director of Social Media and Associate Editor from TVBinges.com, and with me today is Kyle Tremblay, the Editor-in-Chief at TVBinges.com. You can find us on Twitter at BlaireLovesTV and at KyleLovesTV. Remember, both Kyle and Blaire have an E at the end. And you can also follow this podcast's Twitter handle at @TheStrainPod. Hi, Kyle. How you doing today?
The leaves fall from the trees. The fall decays to winter. The decay consumes us all. Welcome to Night Vale. Welcome to the Strain Podcast. Hi, Blaire.
Hi, Kyle. So is poetry your new thing for every episode?
You know what? After last week, I really feel like I've undergone an enlightening. And I am now going to be reading poetry at least 60% of the time.
Sounds like you have a new career path ahead of you.
As a poet, yes.
As a poet. Today, you and I will be discussing Season 2, Episode 6, which is titled Identity. And it was written by Justin Britt Gibson, who has written many other episodes of The Strain and 2 episodes of Banshee. But other than that, he doesn't have many writing credits.
Well, the Banshee credit makes sense to me. Because The Strain is now just morphed into like an action show, and Banshee is probably the best or at least the most effective action show on TV for the last few years. So that makes sense that he would have some associations with that, considering the content of this episode.
You know what? The other episode that he had written was The Third Rail and also Occultation. Occultation was that episode that sort of fell flat where there wasn't... there was the eclipse, but then nothing happened.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And The Third Rail was another episode where nothing happened.
Well, stuff happened this week.
Yes, this week was great. So
yeah,
props out to Justin. He did well this time.
I think the rule is when stuff happens on the Strain, things go well, and when stuff doesn't happen, things go badly.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like you could really just boil all of our commentary down to that.
I don't know if you agree with me, but I think the last 3 episodes, the show has really figured out the formula of how to make things happen.
Yeah. Well, the last 3 have been really good, and they've been good in different ways, but it's weird, because it isn't as simple as we're making it sound, because there have been episodes where stuff technically happened, but it didn't feel like it happened. It's almost like what the Strain has figured out how to do is lend importance to at least most of its plot points in a way that it wasn't doing in the first season, and honestly the first couple episodes of this season, where people would be on their missions. Like, for example, the final scene of Vaughn, who now is officially gone, as Quinlan noted in this episode, but that's that whole break-in to Palmer's place. That is an event that is happening, but it also didn't feel like anything was happening because the setup was so poor and it felt so haphazard that didn't feel like a big event, even though it should have been. What the show has figured out, I think, is how to make stuff feel like it matters a little more, and maybe that's just due to the changing state of the world, and maybe that's just due to F having an enlightening experience like I had, and just shaving his head and instantly becoming an action star. But whatever the case is, these last few episodes have I think been the show's best sustained run to date.
Absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily say that any of them are as good as Creatures of the Night, which is you and I agree, the best episode of the series.
I agree with that.
But in terms, as you're saying, like a sustained arc, multiple episodes in a row, this has been the most enjoyable streak that the show has ever had, and I cannot be more excited to be live tweeting every week.
Yeah, me neither. The live tweeting has been great. I feel like Twitter's really coming alive for the Strain. I feel like the way the Strain got here, to the point where it is now genuinely fun, is it actually got dumber. And I feel like if you really delved into the plot points of this episode, and the previous episode for that matter, they unravel real fast. There's a lot of really, really sketchy storytelling going on here. But it's like we've reached the threshold where it almost doesn't matter. Like, I don't care why Gus is in Angel's kitchen for apparently the last 2 weeks. and I don't care why characters with no urgency whatsoever continue to find themselves outside at night, even though they know full well what's going on. But,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, what was your favorite sloppy plot point? Because my
oh,
favorite was Gus and Angel.
oh man. Well, first of all, that Gus, I've never seen a character in a television show have less to do yet more screen time than Gus in the first 20 minutes of this episode. Like the implication I got, because he didn't even walk into Angel's kitchen, right? He was just there. The scene started and Gus was there. Keep in mind, these are people who just met 2 episodes ago and didn't have any scenes last episode. So there's no like relationship between these two. In fact, all we know is that Angel doesn't really like him. And yet,
Exactly.
Gus, the scene opens, and Gus is in the kitchen. And he's talking to him about his old movies, which is the same thing he was talking about him to him about the last time we saw them 2 episodes ago. So, for me, the implication is, for the last 2 weeks, Gus has just been in the kitchen talking to Angel about his movies.
See, here's the thing that the strain sort of abandoned, which was like an actual sense of time.
Yeah.
Because like we know that F took a train to DC
Yep.
from New York, which I assume takes 2 days.
Sure.
I mean, it's a government train, so maybe,
Well, there's also an
maybe
apocalypse going on.
there's
You would
also
figure
an,
there'd be some slowdowns.
right. So let's give it the benefit of the doubt, 48 hours, right? So he's been gone for 48 hours.
Yeah.
That means a lot of things have happened in 48
Pretty much, yeah.
including the killing of Barnes, which is now like making its way through the circles,
Yes.
the government circles. Zach being like an actual likable character for the first time ever.
Whoa,
Uh,
whoa. We need to really slow down on that one. And well, we keep going with your list, but I'm gonna put a bookmark in that one.
I still think like okay, so the Tandoori place is open 24 hours. So I think that Gus has been hanging out for 48 hours
Okay, fair.
at at this Tandoori place,
Yeah.
like making moon eyes at the daughter of the owners, hanging out with Angel, trying to convince him for 48 hours that he's the Silver Angel, and it took 48 hours of that sort of torture where Angel just finally goes no.
He was interviewing him like Chris Farley.
Yes.
He's like, do you remember that time in that movie when you did that thing? That was great. So ridiculous.
It was really ridiculous.
It took us 20 episodes to learn this key character detail about Gus, which is that he is an enormous classic movies nerd.
Yes.
You
Like
know,
he knows every single movie by his
like,
favorite luchador.
yeah, line by line, to the point where he can freeze frame it and be like, "This is the moment he tore his ACL." It's like Gus knows trivia about these movies.
I believe in the books that it's actually his buddy Cream, who is Hispanic and not black, unlike in the show.
Yeah.
I believe it is Cream who identifies Angel as the Silver Angel and not Gus. Like that's not like Gus sort of recognizes him eventually once Cream's talking to him about it.
Yeah.
But I believe that like it's an other character, but because they've decided to make Gus be like an isolated gangbanger instead of like a gangbanger in a gang.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has to do the work of all of them.
He's the kind of gangbanger who's just got at least 48 hours to kill hanging out in a kitchen. He's, that kind of gangbanger.
Exactly.
I mean, back to what I was originally saying, he literally had nothing to do. Like,
No.
you rarely see a TV show, like, just throw their hands up with a main character and be like, well, he's got nothing to do. Like, he's just eating dinner.
Yes.
There's no story.
So it's like this guy just sent out his only daughter, only child, as far as we can tell, out into the apocalypse to go and deliver some food.
Yes, that's his only screen time.
Yes.
He made a 30-second debut in which he completely uncaringly and almost like as an afterthought, like he's upset that she will even bring up a complaint about it. He's like, yeah, go. It's like into the apocalypse to deliver food.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. But you mentioned another plot. Was it Nora being out in the middle of the night?
All right. We got to talk about this. Because the impetus for Nora and Zach leaving is to get him some clothes. Is that what? Because they're at Feralda's little Goodwill Center that she set up. It appears.
Yeah, I like in my mind in the story I've written in my mind, Nora was there to like consult her on something, and then she was like, "Oh, well, we could get you some clothes while we're here." That's not what they showed us, but that's the only thing that makes sense to
But
me.
like their conversation was not substantial.
No,
Feraldo gave her an update on the progress and was like, Manhattan's too bad to go to do something about. And then Nora was like, hey, can we take some of these clothes? And then Feraldo like sent them with an escort home. But there was
yeah,
nothing substantial to talk about. So
there was kind of a cute moment. I just like I think you everything you've been saying about Nora not really being a character is still true, but Mia
yeah.
Maestro is doing a really good job in the last couple of
Well,
episodes,
they're establishing
including
her as responsible.
yes.
You know,
And
she's the responsible one.
right. So she had that nice little dialogue with Feraldo where she's like saying that she's responsible, and then of course she has to prove that she's responsible in the next scene.
Here's the point. If she is responsible, why is she just dilly-dallying around this Goodwill Center to the point where it becomes night? Like, if there was no urgency at all in anything about Nora and Zach's actions, and yet they just let it become night. You can't. If like the rule number one of the vampire apocalypse is don't be outside at night. They have no other plans that day. They were just sort of hanging around the kitchen talking to Fitzwilliam, and then like in the afternoon they decide to go down get Zach some clothes. Not an urgent matter, by the way. And then because of that, they get themselves in this situation where they were literally seconds away from being killed in the church. Like,
Yes.
why would you do that? Why would you? You know, I mean, I'm just thinking like if I'm as aware of the vampires as Nora is, which is 100% aware, why not leave first thing in the morning, get back by noon, and make sure the child that you're responsible for is safe? Why are you taking him outside at night?
Yeah.
How is that even? It wasn't like there was a delay. It wasn't like there was. It wasn't like she was hurrying and she got stuck in traffic. She just dilly dallied around until night fell, and then they were assaulted by vampires. What?
Well, it was a clever scheme to get Fitzwilliams dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. It makes perfect sense from a show-making perspective. From an in-world perspective, if you're trying to establish this character as being responsible, having her just put Zach in harm's way for no reason whatsoever,
Yeah,
for the
but
most avoidable possible reason.
right, but it's equivalent to the thing you brought up earlier, which was Gus going in with the vampire commandos and all the vampire commandos dying.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
it was an event needed to occur. They didn't know how to make that happen, and they had not established any free plot for why this event might occur. And because they decided to make that event occur,
Right.
they needed to just put these characters in this situation with very little explanation.
Yes, 100% correct. That's it. But what's so stupid is they could have just written a line instead of that whole completely useless Feraldo Nora dialogue. They could have had Feraldo tell Nora like, "Hey, all the roads are blocked. We can't,
Right.
you know, like right now there was an event. It happened on the streets, some kind of murder or some kind of incident with the police. You can yada yada that. It doesn't matter. But hey, you're gonna have to stay here until night, and
Right.
like and then like go from there." You know, like why does it just have to be Nora's own ignorance that gets them in trouble?
Right. At
It's
which
so easy.
point, if we're trying to establish Nora as responsible, then she would have just stayed at the police station overnight.
Right. Why not just stay there? Why does she graciously accept the offer of a driver who apparently is completely unfamiliar with the circumstances he's in because he hits an obvious vampire with his car and then he gets out to check on the vampire. like this guy is employed by Feraldo, whose only mission has been to exterminate the vampires, and yet when he hits one, he acts as if it's this like life-changing event, and he needs to investigate the scene.
Yeah. No,
I
it
mean,
wasn't. It wasn't a great situation.
but the purpose of all this is to say, who cares? Who
Right.
cares? This is all really stupid, but it's stupid now at a point where it's kind of sublime, where I'm not even sweating it and just enjoying the fact that there was a lot of action in this episode. The church scene, for all the dicey plot points it needed to get there, was super cool. Fitzwilliam's death was genuinely a surprise.
And genuinely difficult.
Yeah, tough. Tough also from the perspective that I kind of respect the show, because remember a couple weeks ago we had that conversation about how if the strain is going to incorporate Fitzwilliam, it needs to really take stock of how it's been writing diverse characters and not turn him into just sort of a generic good guy because they're afraid to assign the one black character any traits. And I feel like the strain took a long hard look at itself and was like, you know what, we're not gonna do that. Like we can't. This is out of our pay grade, and so we're just gonna kill him off immediately.
Oh, that's so sad.
But it's like, you know what? If you're not, if you can't write it, if you can't do it, then don't try to do it.
Yeah, if you're not qualified to write it, if you don't know if you can encapsulate that story, then
there's no shame in punting. You know, you can punt. It's fine. It was like 3rd and 7 or 4th and 7, and they were like, you know what? We're not going for it. We're just going to punt and kill the character.
But then it's the first mate. I mean, a lot of people on Twitter were sort of up in arms about like the only black character. Yeah. The only character who's died this season is a black character. Right. And a couple of people were saying, oh, well, the first character to die is a black character. And it's like, well, no, there was... Barnes. Well, Barnes is a little more minor. More like Sean Astin's character last season and Kelly.
Hold on. Is Barnes more minor than Fitzwilliams, who last season had probably 4 scenes? Like, he's not a main character. He was what we projected on him to be a main character because he joined our main cast, but he was not a significant character last season. He didn't have an arc. You know,
that's fair. This season they tried though. They tried to give him an arc.
They set it up. Yeah. And so we sort of accepted him as a main character, but the actual now in hindsight, not really an important character.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is I think that Barnes is a good point too, but I think people are forgetting that Sean Astin died and that Kelly died. And Kelly still has, of course, a role on the series, but nonetheless, they both still died.
Yeah, Kelly is tricky because she's still a character. She's just different. I think Sean Astin's character is actually the most major character to be actually written off the show.
Yes, and probably the biggest name.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yes, it was. I am lamenting the death of Fitzwilliam because I thought he was going to become a really rad character.
Me too.
And then he was suddenly gone, and I actually felt something. So I would like to congratulate the strain on that. Like I actually, I had the feels for a minute.
Sure, this is what I think I coined this term as far as TV talking about, although with the internet, someone's probably already said it before. But back when Revolution premiered, its best character was this woman. I can't even hope to remember her name, but she was sort of tough and a little bit older than the rest of the group. And in about episode 5 or 6, they very shockingly killed her off. And it was the show's best episode. It probably remains as the show's best episode, considering I watched the whole first season and it never got better than that moment. But I called it.
And it got canceled.
And it got canceled the next season. I called it dark magic because they were sacrificing a good character for a temporary boost. And I feel like that's a bit of what's going on here with the strain, which is absolutely that moment was emotional. When Fitzwilliam died, and it was shocking, and Abe decapitating him was a great payoff, and it's like
mid-sentence.
Yeah, it was just good. It was a good scene and a good moment. But you're also losing that character now, a character who, had a connection to Palmer and seemed to be integrated into the plot at least. And we had that scene with him and his brother, and we introduced his brother, and we had laid some groundwork for that character. And now that's all up in arms. And the reason the scene worked is because that groundwork sort of made the character feel a little more essential than he actually was. But it is a little bit, there's certainly a cost to that. It wasn't like he had run his course, and because he hadn't run his course is why it worked. But that's what I call dark magic, where you're making a sacrifice.
I like that.
To make it work, yeah.
I really like that. Do you think that his brother is going to start to be playing a more significant role?
I think it's possible, and I think it's equally possible that we'll never see him again.
That's fair.
I think I really don't know. I can't predict that, but it could go either way.
I'll give you that. Okay, so all this conversation started because I said this was Zach's best episode.
Oh my god. Have you caught the strain? What's happening here?
Well, I've caught a sprain.
Oh yeah, that's why we're recording a day late.
Yes. For our listeners who, I apologize for us recording a day late. I twisted my ankle yesterday
At a Renaissance fair.
at a Renaissance fair because I am a true and total geek.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, and you posted a picture of how you treated the ankle,
I did.
and you did so by wrapping bubble wrap around it. And I thought, you being a TV nerd, I thought you were making an homage to the classic episode of The Office titled "The Injury," in which Michael Scott wakes up and steps on his foreman grill and burns his foot, and then proceeds to wrap it in bubble wrap. And it turns out you've never seen that episode, and so you independently made the same choice that Michael Scott made, which is pretty great.
I would like to say that I was at Renaissance Fair with one of my producer friends who works in reality TV, and that was her decision to wrap me in bubble wrap because that's all we had.
I wonder if she was trolling, if she knew, if she had seen the episode and was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get Blaire good."
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's what she did, and I'm sure she was
Oh.
shocked that I didn't get the reference.
Oh, your producer is my favorite person.
If you guys want to go see that picture, it's on my Instagram. My Instagram is also Blaire Loves TV. It's just like my Twitter handle. But going back to me having not caught the strain, no, I thought this was Zach's best episode.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Defend that statement.
Okay, I'm going to defend that statement, and this is a defense based on how horrible he has been this season.
Of course, goes without saying.
Right. Is that he was a little snot-nosed kid at like the beginning of the episode, but then pretty rapidly he actually, for the first time ever, showed kind emotions toward another character. A character that I actually think has sort of earned that from him, because Nora has sort of been like she's been his staple. That's not the word I'm looking for.
His rock, his anchor.
Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been his anchor this whole time. Like, they may not have had like a super well-developed relationship, just like as people, not just as characters, just as people. But like, you know, his dad is grieving. His mom died. Nora's always there. She's always in the background watching. She's hugged him before whenever something weird happened. Yep. And then, like, now his dad is a raging alcoholic, and his dad has then now disappeared. And Nora's the one who's there for him. She's standing by to take care of him. She's not his mom, but she does it, and she's been doing it since season 1. More and more as time goes on, she's been given that role. But she's sort of taken hold of the situation and cared for him. So it felt kind of realistic to me that he was kind of like really mad at his dad because his dad let his mom die, and now his dad's a raging alcoholic, and now his dad's abandoning him. So it feels realistic that the person who has been there for him is the person he's going to ask, "Hey, how are you?" And like, that was just like when that moment happened, and I know it was written so that people would like Zach more, but it worked on me. and then they had like a sweet moment where they went to go get him clothes, which I know was just stupid, and like just to get them out, to go get them by the church, to get them attacked by Kelly, etc. But like, it was still like they're laughing with each other, and we haven't seen this kid laugh yet, and it was like, oh, I kind of am starting to buy him.
Okay, that's a pretty good case. But I feel like the case you made is for Nora, not for Zach.
Oh.
Because I think all of that reflects more positively on Nora, who is taking this responsibility and sort of shouldering the burden of dragging around this devil child from place to place. This sad, mopey, just miserable kid. I'm talking about Zach, not the actor. I don't want to speak... I mean, the actor is who he is, but I don't want to speak bad about him personally because he's a kid. Right. but I mean, was your opinion swayed when he, in the very first scene, heard Fitzwilliam talking and just walked away without saying a word? I was like, cool reaction, Zach.
I think the kid is just like, I can't deal with all these people all the time.
He looks so sour. He's
I
like,
know.
Like, I really thought he was going to say something racist.
Well, our friend Casey, B-Style... Oh, I always get this wrong. B-Style...
It's... Okay. Her Twitter handle is an abbreviation for Bay Area Style File. So it's BA Style File.
Okay,
Girl.
BA Style File. Girl.
Yep.
Our friend Casey pointed out that none of our characters have really been mean to one another that much at all in this show.
Sure.
Like sometimes they'll snap at each other, but it seemed like everybody was really aggressive towards Fitzwilliam.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like Fett especially.
Why does Fett dislike him? He saved Fett's life.
This is what I was. It's like mild racism. I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah, no, it was, there was a real thick air of racism in those scenes. Maybe that's why they had to kill off Fitzwilliam really suddenly. They were like, oh, this is gonna get bad.
well, nobody has chemistry here. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, like
not that that's the actor's fault, but
we can't write these scenes without everyone hating him for whatever reason, and so we need to move on. But okay,
Yeah.
so there was that moment. That was our introduction to Zach in this episode, and then as they run into the church, you know, always the right move to flee into a confined space.
yes,
Makes perfect sense. You know when you're running from a vampire. Who you are ostensibly faster than, because we've never seen Kelly move very fast. The feelers move pretty well. Kelly doesn't move very well. And the feelers also seem really easy to kill, considering that Nora had a gun. But anyway, always best to avoid the open road and all the many options it brings, and just run into a church with 3 rooms. So Zach and Nora are running, and Zach on a flat church floor falls on his face.
he's wearing a really long scarf. I would like to put that out there.
Falls on his face for no reason. Classic, like young blonde in a horror movie move. Except he's this boy. And he falls on his face as he's being chased. Takes 20 seconds to get up so that everyone can catch up to him. And then he has an asthma attack and he needs his inhaler.
That is a constant that they have done a poor job with. But like when he saw Kelly for the first time, he had the asthma attack too. Like this is from the books. Like every time he sees his mom in vampire form, he has like an asthma attack because like he can't separate that. And they're doing a very bad job.
No, that thread has not been kept up. So it was just like a few weeks ago we see him just flailing at baseballs, looking like the least athletic kid in the world. And then here he trips on his own volition and just falls flat on his face in a life or death situation. And then he has an asthma attack that reveals their location to the vampires. It's like, man, are they like, what is going on here? Like he's good. Did the writers have a bet with each other, like who can make him the most useless? Because I can't even fathom how he's been on screen so long and he doesn't have any redeeming qualities. Like how do you write a character who is ostensibly a good guy and a child to boot and not give him a single redeeming quality? Like how is that? That's almost like a TV version of child abuse. Like no, it's like how do you do that? How do you make an audience hate a kid this much?
He asked Nora how she was.
Great. He knows how to speak. I've never seen a child like set up to fail this badly on TV. Like it's really like I'm at the point now where I don't think it's the performance. Like the performance is what the performance is. But there's real intentionality here to make this kid as useless as possible. And like you're right, like this episode they did like make him more human, like he wasn't just a whine machine. But in terms of like his use, like again, why does he fall on his face? Like what's the point of that? Like what does that get you other than just enforce the fact that he is completely useless? It's like it's like the asthma attack. Okay, I get that there's supposed to be a thing there. The show's done a bad job of keeping it up, but I get there's an intention there to like establish something. But like, why does he fall on his face? Like, why make that happen? Why is that?
Because it's a classic horror. Because that entire sequence is a classic horror movie sequence. Like, no, everything about it.
Yeah, of course.
And like for me, the worst part of that sequence was actually not him falling, even though I thought that was pretty comical. Yeah. It was that they tricked Kelly with his scarf, Kelly and the Feelers, by like sticking his scarf in like the little kid bunker.
Pretty good.
And like she gets really mad about it and she kicks into a table and she breaks it with her kick. Like it's intense. It's like vampire kick, bam, super strength.
Yeah.
And then Nora pushes a shelf in front of a door and Kelly can't open the door. Like that was the part That was the part that I was like, this is so classic, stupid horror movie.
Also, Nora moved that bookshelf in front of the door with no effort whatsoever. No,
Yeah.
Nora moved it as if it weighed 2 pounds.
Yeah. Nora has more super strength than Kelly the vampire, who can kick through a desk and break it.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah.
that whole scene was so ridiculous, but it was great. It was like great fun. You know,
It
it
was
was
great.
a lot of fun. And then, right at the right moment, the cavalry arrives. I mean, it's fun seeing like the feelers sort of scurry over the church pews.
Yeah.
And that was a good like visual thing. And then everyone gets there, and Fitzwilliams bites it, and yeah,
Fed had a really nice line.
yeah, Fed and his one-liners.
Hey, Mama Bear.
Yeah, like the whole scene was so much fun, and I think that's the what we're drawing here is that like this is all dumb, but it's all a lot of fun. And we haven't even gotten to F yet. Holy cow! But
I know. I figured we'd save the best for last.
yeah, but yeah, that's so I feel like the Strain really turned a corner here these last couple weeks, to where it's now like it's not bothering me, this like missing plot stuff and this weird character decisions they're making. It's like, or it's bothering me less because I'm having so much fun just watching the show.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say the same thing. Although, I will say, there are still 7 episodes left, right? That's traditionally a 13-episode season.
Yes.
There's still 7 episodes left for me to be happy, but I'm really, really concerned that church scene was the replacement for the scary scene I keep talking about.
Oh no, your beloved scary scene.
My beloved scary scene from chapter 12, I think. Chapter 12 of the second book.
But nothing happened in that church scene, ultimately. Like, other than Fitzwilliams dying.
Yeah,
nothing happened.
The only thing I'll say is it has to do with Kelly, Nora, and Zach. That's
okay.
Those 3 characters are heavily involved with the scene that I'm hoping for. And so I was really, really scared that was like what was happening.
Yes. I feel like we've got some, because there's going to be another confrontation, right? Kelly's not just going to give up.
Right, yeah, she's not just going to give up, and now Nora's sort of like the stepmom, sort of like the surrogate mother. So like there's definitely like they're establishing that, which is, this scene was not in the books. But I think this episode did a really good job of establishing, and this is what I'm talking about the Zach-Nora relationship, but it established the sort of like caretaker stepmother role, which you would think that would make Kelly really mad, since she's like conscious now.
Good point.
She's not just one of she's a random vampire. She's a conscious vampire who can make decisions about her dear ones.
It's not clear to me exactly how conscious she is. Like, I kind of thought she would end up like Icarst, where she's just a normal like person on the outside, but obviously a vampire.
Right.
Like, but she's really just like sort of a more advanced version of the normal vampires.
She's like a Bolivar.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she kind of looks like herself, but not really. You know, it's I don't know. Maybe eventually or whatever, but and of course Bolivar now is a whole different thing. But
right. But then the Master lets these vampires have their own knowledge because their own knowledge is useful to him. Like I don't know how well established that is in the TV show, but like Icarst is crazy good at concentration camps and crazy good at torture and like cruelty and all that stuff, like in a way that most humans aren't, which is why he like allows Icarus to have his own consciousness, because he can use that consciousness for his betterment. As Fitzwilliams says at the beginning of the episode, that the Stoneheart group has started to make concentration camps. And so, like, which is very subtle the way he talks about it. But, like, that's something that he needs Icor's special knowledge for, is to be able to create and run a real concentration camp. Huh. So if you think about it, Kelly, if he needs to stop the scientists that can stop him, Kelly's special knowledge allows him to accomplish that goal. So okay. I don't really know why he's kept Bolivar conscious.
Well, to as we found out in this episode, to inhabit his body, right?
Well, yeah, but I don't know why he has to be conscious for that. Like,
sure.
I don't think he has any special knowledge. Also, side note, when the Master went into Sardou's body, Sardou was a human, and he dumped all his wormy things into Sardou the human. Right. This time he dumped all his wormy things into a vampire. So that's kind of interesting.
Apparently no difference.
Apparently no difference. Yeah. I would have thought that maybe there would have been a difference, but no.
No, I guess my sort of pet theory about where the season was going is that he was going to do it to F. is that F was targeted to be the master, because I was operating under the assumption that it had to be a human. I didn't know that he could just like promote a vampire.
Right.
So I thought he was gonna do it. He was gonna catch F. And I actually thought, like at the start of the season, that's why F was gonna lose his hair. I thought that was our impetus for going bald. That F was gonna become the bad guy of the series, and because that would have made sense, right? Fett would have been the hero. You know, it's like that's sort of the my sort of wish going into the season is that that's how it would play out, that you turn the hero of the series into the villain, he gets bald, everything's fun. But no, the strain not go in a different direction, which is fine. Nope. It doesn't, just because it doesn't do what I want it to do doesn't mean that it's any worse or whatever. So yeah, now he's Bolivar. Bolivar's the master,
which is what happens in the books.
Okay.
Bolivar does become the master after they hurt the master real good. So they sped it along a little bit, but it is what happens in the books, and I am happy that ridiculous Sardu body is out of our lives.
Really? Because what's interesting now is Bolivar's just a dude. Like, he seems like I know he's a rock star, but like, in terms of appearance, there's nothing really special about him, especially when he takes off the wig. He just looks like another vampire.
Right.
The one thing about the Master before is that he was 7 feet tall, and he had that hood, and he was sort of towering and imposing, and now he's just kind of like a guy.
But I think I'll try not to feed too much. I think that there are benefits to having an agile small body that he didn't really realize when he took on that 7-foot body.
Well, didn't he in the very first scene of the series, like in like a nanosecond, slit everybody's throat on that plane? Isn't that what happened?
Yes.
Okay.
He did do that. But he is also more easily seen when he's out and about. And
sure,
he looks like unique and that tall.
Yeah.
And I think that like the smaller they are, the faster they are, as is shown by the feelers, that they are much more agile than Kelly is.
Yeah. I thought that was just because they moved with all 4 limbs. Like Kelly doesn't walk like an ape, and the feelers kind of do.
Part of it, but part of that is the type of vampire they are, and part of that is their size.
Yeah.
So, like, it's harder to make a 130-pound woman do that than to make a 40-pound child.
Okay, so the Master previously was like a warrior, and now he's reincarnated himself as a rogue. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the D&D referencing.
Yep.
I wrote somebody was in a Dungeons and Dragons game in my notes.
I'm excited about this.
Oh, hold on. Dungeons. Oh, here it is. I said Angel is playing a bad game of Dungeons and Dragons in my notes.
Wait. With who?
Like, it's just because the way that he talks and the way that he's trying to hide his backstory, I feel like that's a very Dungeons and Dragons thing. Like,
I get it.
I'm a huge super nerd, as you guys know, because I went to Renaissance Fair. But like that's like a very Dungeons and Dragons thing to do, and then just to tag along to a group because you feel obligated.
Right.
Like it's just like it just felt like watching a bad game of D&D, especially because Gus then pulled out some axes from his sleeves. And yes. I just thought that was the best.
You're right. That whole scene felt like LARPing.
Yes.
That was a LARP scene.
That is exactly what that felt like.
Oh, that's a good point. Oh, now, what if Angel is affecting the limp? What if that's a character detail?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, man. This opens up a whole new world. I think that story just got 200% more interesting now that I'm thinking about it as like a very elaborate D&D game.
That was dialogue from a session of Dungeons and Dragons. I've played it before. I've been Gus. When you talk to the NPC and the NPC won't give you anything, and you're like, "Can I spend a luck point? Like, what can I do right now?"
Oh man, I feel like this is a real breakthrough. This is very interesting. Now I know what Gus has been up to.
Yes, exactly. He's been rolling D20s.
Oh! Don't say rolling D20s.
Did I just let my inner nerd out too much?
No, I mean that's okay. It was all fun and games until you said that.
Now we have to go back to
now I just feel bad.
All right, well, we should talk about F then.
Let's get to F.
Yeah, with his buddy Rob and his gal pal Lee.
Rob and Lee. We barely knew ye.
Oh no. That poetry you're talking about.
I'm falling back into it. Last week I said that F shaved his head and immediately became Jason Bourne.
Hmm.
I was wrong. He shaved his head and immediately became James Bond. Because what we found out this week is even when he's on a mission to save the world, F still got some time to bang chicks.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And I would also like to say that Lee character was a really well-written female character
Yeah.
who showed up for all of 40 minutes.
Killed immediately.
Killed immediately. It's like the best written female character we've had.
I feel like this is what the Strain does in this episode. We saw it twice, which is it introduces a character who's potentially interesting, but also diverse in some way. In this case, well, I guess she was a blonde woman, and the Strain loves this blonde women, but she was a woman who's not the victim of every circumstance.
Yeah, and a powerful woman. She's like a boss.
Yes,
Yeah.
powerful woman, and then the Strain also introduced the black character, and it's like, oh, panic, kill them both.
Yeah. I would like to say, I don't know if you agree with me, but the casting for Lee, she looked a lot like White Nora to me.
That's a good
Like-
call. I can see that.
Yeah, she, like different, very different, but very like same enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I was interested in that character and kind of bummed to see her killed. It certainly wasn't surprising. Like it just that's the kind of stuff that happens on the show.
But James Bond is a great analogy.
Yeah,
because,
he's James
like,
Bond now.
The last line that his new blonde lover says to him is, "Who are you?" And then
Oh
dies.
man, classic
like-
Bond.
Classic Bond.
And he's that whole the fact that half of F scenes took place in a bar this week.
I know. Whoever was playing our bingo was really definitely going to be getting a lot of points from the F drinks at a time when it's not a good time.
We're gonna talk about bingo later because we had quite a moment in bingo. But yeah, it was. I mean, for me. This was the best part of the episode. I am so in on F. Just like I said last week, bursting out of his cocoon and becoming a beautiful butterfly.
Yes.
Like I am just so into this. How he's finally an action hero, and it kind of they kind of had to ship him out and get him away from all of the other characters.
Yeah.
To allow him to breathe, and I mean, it's certainly removing the wig let him breathe, and it feels like a rebirth of sorts for that
So
character.
it's a weight off of his head.
Literally and figuratively. And he's now like a completely different character because he's on a mission, and it's a mission that the show took some time to set up, and it seems important, and it's to eradicate the vampires, and so like the dots connect.
Yeah.
With this, and yeah.
I would say his buddy Rob, the first thing he said is that he lost his hair, and I thought that was great. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Let's acknowledge.
And F was like, it was time for a change. And it's
Right.
like that was definitely the writers being like, all right, guys, we heard you.
Right. It was time for a change, and then he's also like, and I'm Jonathan Crowley now.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Too bad he didn't grow a mustache. He needs a mustache twirl. I feel like that's his next move.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm a little bit like, I don't really know how to say this, but I don't understand why the writers decided to give him the name Crowley. I do understand because Aleister Crowley is like a dark arts guy who people who like vampires love Aleister Crowley, and they
Sure.
love to talk about him and all of his dark theories. And it's just felt really heavy-handed to me. Maybe I'm the only person who got that. I don't know if you did, but it made me I was like, come on guys, you can do better.
No, I think it's a reference for dummies like me to be like, aha, that I know that's a thing. But for
I
people
know
who
that
are
is.
a little more knowledgeable like you, it just comes off as on the nose.
Yeah, it's like if a character was named Vlad, I'd be like, really?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Let's not.
Yeah, there's a line between an homage and just sort of pandering.
Exactly.
For me, this is more of an homage because I just have so little familiarity with Crowley that it's not distracting, but I can understand for someone who's a little more well versed.
Right. But okay, so this whole sequence of events, F is just drinking the whole time.
Yeah.
He hands Lee an iPad with some numbers on it, and she gets it right away because she went to Princeton.
It was so yada yada. It was just like numbers.
It was like, yeah, your math looks sound.
When did F calculate these numbers? By the way,
I don't. And when did he get an iPad?
Yeah, what formulas does he have? But
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Well, good, we're skipping over that.
Who knows? Yeah, no, it's there. He's got all of his Jonathan Crowley credentials. Um,
His fake ID, which which has a 100% success rate, even though he's being constantly grilled by the government.
I know, and which I'm really glad that you're as excited as I am by the fact that his ID was made for him before he shaved his head
Well,
off.
that's the cherry on top right there.
I know.
When you pointed that out last week, everything about F got 50% more funny because he keeps showing this ID
His ID that was made after he shaved his, or before
before he
he
shaved
his
his
head
head.
off, and he's got a bald head. Um,
Yes.
yes. But no, I mean, I thought everything with him was spectacular this week, even though it like felt like a character I've never met. It was awesome to sort of see him go out in the environment in the real world where the apocalypse hasn't like hit yet, and working with the military and working with this scientist who works for a chemical pharmacy company and like and like killing dudes and like, you know, losing ladies that he liked. Like it was just like, this is a good action show. Like this is
Yeah.
fun. This is like a good enjoyable time right now. And I don't feel like I felt that way about F much ever at all.
Right. The government stuff continues to be perplexing. In this episode, we found out that Washington apparently responded very swiftly to the threat of vampires in a way that New York utterly did not, and that's referenced by the show, that New York is like in this sort of unique state of gridlock. It also establishes kind of offhandedly that the virus has like spread a bit, which we had no concept of prior to this, and
Right.
it was like a background comment by Rob or something. And then we find out that there are fistfights occurring in Congress, and that the president was like impeached or something? Like I don't.
They were voting to impeach him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the strain kind of making some concessions about how poorly the government's been portrayed like this in the last season,
Right.
where it's like the government has been so useless that they're now getting in fistfights and impeaching the president.
Exactly.
Like that's kind of like the strain making concessions, I think.
Yeah, but that's also kind of hilarious, and I don't think would be unrealistic.
Well, I mean, considering the road that we've come this far down now, you know, what else can you really do? Like,
Right.
you know. But I will say, like, if the situation is serious enough to turn our Congress into, like, physical combat chaos, it makes even less sense why New York is not as panicked as it should be.
I think it's like a port city that they've given up. Like when you, I don't know if
New York City?
but I know, but like, do you ever play Risk?
No,
Have
but
you ever played the board game Risk? Because you give up your port cities. You give up your port countries whenever you play Risk because you're like, oh man, the enemy can easily get here. I have to fortify in the center. Like that's what you do.
That's clearly not what they're doing, though, because the that would be born of a state of hypervigilance.
Yeah.
Everything we've seen about the government is from a state of complete ignorance.
Right.
So if they've given up New York, it's completely by accident. And also, nobody informed New York because they seem pretty cool with the arrangement, to the point where like food delivery service is still running. so clearly,
With vampires back.
yeah, right. Vampires are attacking. They added a $50 surcharge onto the food delivery, which is nice. I mean, that makes sense. That moment when she's like, "Your food will be $99," I was like, "Oh, good." Like at least it wasn't like $13.95.
Right. Exactly. Poor
Yeah.
thing. One of the things in F's story that I thought was interesting was it was one of the rare moments when people die of person-on-person violence. I mean,
Yes.
obviously we had Barnes and F last week, which was sort of a shock to my system. But like this was very interesting, like to see the bad guys employ a human to kill other humans.
Yeah.
In that sort of, you know, spy 007 way, but like
Yes.
it was good. It was good to see that, like to see like the world still functioning sort of in a real world way during an emergency, you know?
Sure. And it was also established, you know, how formidable an opponent the Stoneheart group is. I mean, we kind of already knew that, but so let me run the chain of events as I understand them by you, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong about this.
Okay.
Because I might need some help with this. So that conversation with the general, that F and is it Rob? Is that his name?
Rob, that's what I.
F's buddy. His name is said once, I think. Once or
I think
twice.
Twice. And
Yeah.
like I rewatched the episode and I had to rewind it once when I was pretty sure they said his name and they didn't. And
I was sure Rob was a bad guy. I was sure he was the assassin.
I was
And then
too.
it turns out, no, he just gets killed immediately.
He's just F's friend who got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, but isn't that always the case? Like, wouldn't that have been the natural choice as the assassin? So,
Yeah.
but my understanding is that Palmer did not know about F's little excursion. The story he flew under the radar because he was on this train with his magical fake ID, and of course he's bald now, so no one recognizes him, even though he is a prominent member of the CDC.
He's the golden boy of the
Yeah,
CDC.
right. He's like the rising star of the CDC. Cuts off his hair, nobody recognizes him.
Yeah.
That talk with the general who suggested going to the Stoneheart group tipped off the Stoneheart group, because the first thing the general did is say, hey, there are these guys trying to cut you off out of this deal.
Right.
And the Stoneheart group is like, oh crap, I bet that's F. And they send this assassin, the world's least effective assassin, because he kills the one defenseless guy, and then he just sort of waits in the bedroom, and he waits for F and Lee to come in, kills Lee first, the non-threat, and then shoots F once in the chest at point-blank range, doesn't think to follow up, even though he just shot Lee twice. F has the time on the ground to pull his gun and shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
Is that what happened here?
So the thing with him shooting Lee was that she was a witness. And F said, go, he doesn't care about you, because F, being dumb, really thought that was the case. But no, the guy was like, well, no, I do care that there's a witness, and kills her.
But here's the thing. Of the two of them, he knows F. The guy knows F is a very dangerous character because he has that iPad with information on him. Like, he knows that F is the sort of the leader of the resistance. Like, although I guess Abe is, but he knows F knows what's going on.
Right.
And so, of the two of them, the one you would think is armed is F. So if F sends the woman to run away, you shoot F twice, which takes 2 seconds maybe. Make sure he's dead, and then you chase after her. Like this is a professional hitman.
I don't know if it's clear if the hitman was meant to kill F or capture F. Because...
Okay.
And that's... I can't really go further than that, just saying that's a little bit book knowledge-y.
Okay.
Like, I don't... I mean, this doesn't happen in the book.
He shot him square in the chest. So
yes. Well, he shot him in the shoulder, not in the chest.
On the shoulder? Okay.
The shoulder. Like, that's I'm going to stop you from moving right now.
Right.
Shot. That's not I'm going to kill you shot.
It just seems if you're a professional, you should do a little more to subdue him. Like, you don't just shoot him once and then look at him.
Right.
Well,
yes. Because he shot Rob straight in the head.
Right. Or how about this? In the hours after you kill Rob by shooting you in the head, you set up some kind of like plan, to capture F upon entry, like a Home Alone style trap. You've got a lot of time. It's a big house. They don't expect a thing. You're a professional. Maybe you come up with something better than stand in the shadows. Like, how long was he standing there?
But that's just, again, a part of the tropiness of the strain. The strain...
I mean, obviously, he's not going to kill F.
I know, but, like, it's a show that just relies on tropes over and over and over again to function. And it relies on the audience knowing those tropes and the audience acquiescing to the fact that there is little lead-in to allow those tropes to work. And that was just another one of them.
Sure. At this point, the contract we have with the show, as the contract that F signed, is just as onerous as that one, is that we're just gonna ignore this stuff. like none of this stuff matters. And I am mostly happy to do that. I mean, we have to talk about it on the podcast because it's this sort of the ridiculousness of it all is part of the show. But
because we're critics and
because we're critics and because it is fun to talk about like the incredible liberties the strain takes with his storytelling, which is almost unprecedented for a show in its second season.
Sometimes those liberties work. Like, I think this episode was incredibly effective, although being an entirely tropey episode.
Yeah.
And then there's other times, like we talked about with Gus going into Stoneheart and losing all his vampire commandos.
Right.
Like, that was incredibly ineffective. Like, you just have to accept that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. I think every show has those crests and troughs, Like, it just depends on what the show wants to do, how it wants to do it.
It's suspension of disbelief. I think virtually every other show on TV does a better job of hiding it than The Strain. The Strain, it's so surface level, the problems with all of these plans. But again, I mean, I loved everything about F in this episode. I loved that he got drunk. I loved that he slept with the woman. I love that he barely seemed to remember it. I just love that he's this now like this James Bond kind of character, like drinking martinis and picking up women as he's trying to save the world. Like it's a much more fun character that way.
Yes, no, I agree. And I don't know how effective it's going to be for the rest of the show, but this little tryst off to Washington, D.C. has been good for him and good for us as an audience to like him again.
Yeah. He's really like one of the only characters that I like actively root for in these last 2 episodes, because I like it. You know, I'm a sucker for this kind of movie, and so like I like it when he's fighting guys on trains. Like I found myself rooting that he would not be captured in these episodes. Like I obviously know that his solution to the strain is going to fail because the show is called The Strain, and it's not just going to end. But it's fun watching him, you know, try to get stuff done and like try to, you know, figure out a way to be effective with his plan.
Exactly. No, I agree. Do you want to do a little bit of Strain Bingo talk?
Strain Bingo, I got to shout out the Wig Talk Army first of all.
Sure.
Shout out to Lieutenant Catherine at Kath Menard on Twitter, who came up with the nickname a few weeks back of calling Corey Stoll LL Cool Stow.
LL Cool Stoll.
LL Cool Stow, which now I feel like is a persona that the character has embraced. Like this episode, he was not behaving as F, he was behaving as LL Cool Stow.
I know. It's amazing.
So that was great. And then our other lieutenant, Laura Lee, who wanted to warn everyone that things are going to get crazy from here on out. She's very excited. She's like a super fan of the show.
Okay, is she a super fan of the books too? Like, what does she mean?
Not at all. She's reading the first book right now.
Okay.
She got into the show and is now going back and reading the books, but she loves it so far.
Good on her, because the first 2 books are amazing. The third book's pretty good too. It's a little less heavy on the sciencey stuff. I like the sciencey stuff better, but yes, you go, Laura Lee. You go, Glenn Coco. A mighty you go, Glenn Coco, to Laura Lee for reading the book.
Our weekly award that you get. But anyway, Strain Bingo. So we had controversy this week with Strain Bingo, because this episode hit so many bingo squares.
Yes.
That it seemed like, I mean, we've been talking about it being tropey. I feel like hitting this many bingo squares is an indication of how tropey it was.
Yes.
I did the tally, and it hit either 17 or 18 of the 24.
Holy wow.
Which is remarkable. So our dear friend on Twitter, Mary S, or at Batmary, like Batman, but Batmary, called bingo and thought she had it. Now we should remember that Mary started watching this show about 2 weeks ago, and may or may not know the character names, but she had a solid 4 in a row. She had Fett Does Something Badass, which is pretty much a free square every episode. In this episode, it was the raid on the church. Yes. Zach Wines, again, free square.
He's always gonna do it.
The Feelers made a prominent appearance in this episode. Mm-hmm. And a main character death we got in this episode with Fitzwilliam. The square that she was missing, although she claimed that she got, was the Master talking about doom and or glory. And this is really our fault, because we should have made this the Master or any ancient talks about doom and or glory, because what she was confused about the identity of the Quinlan character.
She thought Quinlan was the Master.
Because Quinlan was talking about glory. And
so she thought Quinlan was a bad guy?
Well, it's unclear if she knows that the Master is a bad guy. Again, she started watching 2 episodes ago.
Okay.
But she knew the Master was a vampire, and she knew that a vampire who seemed to have a lot of gravitas was talking about glory. But it turns out the scene she thought was the Quinlan scene, in which he goes in and talks to the agents and is basically like, I gotta clean this up, but for my own reasons. And so she technically did not. Oh yeah.
Go, just shout out to Quinlan, because they're doing justice by that guy. Just want to put that out there.
Okay, well, yeah. I did want to mention that scene, because it certainly is like a setup scene.
Yeah.
The exact kind of scene they were doing with Vaughn early on. So hopefully this has a better ending.
Yes.
But so far so good, right?
Yeah.
Bones.
Yeah. No, yeah, Bonesword, like talking about like ancient cultures and how he's lived through the world and like
That was
how
cool.
he's gonna stop this from happening. It's like Quinlan by far is the coolest character in the books.
Yeah.
Like like they do the whole like perspective background character thing for him that they've done for that they did for like Sardu,
Hmm.
like where how he became a vampire and what it means and all that stuff. And as you can see, Quinlan can walk around in the daylight. Um,
Yes.
so Quinlan is a very special
Wait,
vampire.
he can, but he also said that he needs a team of humans who can walk around in the daylight.
Yeah, because it was like overcast, so like he can walk around during overcast. But if it
Okay,
was like bright out, he would have some issues.
gotcha.
So he, yeah, which is very funny. They show him in daylight. He's like, I need day people.
Yeah,
Um,
right. I was a little bit confused about the rules of Quinlan.
Yes. But so yes, he's a very magical, awesome creature who's a very unique type of vampire, and the actor is doing a phenomenal job of just like making him a total badass. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it. That's all I'm saying. I'm really stoked.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm all for introducing cool characters.
yes.
I support that.
But I'm sorry I interrupted the string bingo.
No, so yeah, so sadly we had to rule that that was not a bingo. Although I want to thank Mary for participating and appealing the ruling until she figured out what the character's name was. But no, we are big fans of Mary, and I'm sure she'll get bingo eventually. That is our closest call to date with the strain bingo. And man, there were a couple others within one. We were what's the other one? My bingo card. We were Dutch solves a problem via hacking away from
Oh.
another bingo, and we were Dutch and Fet flirt, and Abe speaks about the oxidolumin away from another bingo. I mean, there was some stuff in this episode that happens in a lot of episodes that just magically didn't happen. Like, even though in an episode where like almost everything happened that normally happens on the strain,
Right.
and we were Gus trash talks a vampire away.
Yep.
Which, I mean, he dealt with the vampires directly. If he had said one line to them, like a one-liner, we would have had bingo. So it was really close, is what I'm saying.
So
Yeah.
we should have high hopes for episode 7, is what you're saying.
I feel like we're headed in the right direction, bingo-wise.
Maybe we'll take it under consideration. An old vampire talks about doom and glory. We'll take that under consideration as a change, because we do now have five speaking vampire roles that are ancient vampires that can talk about doom and glory. So
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's worth the adjustment.
Yeah.
So that we can see. I actually wanted to say I kind of wish that Icorst looks like a sad puppy. Was one of the bingo tiles because Icorst remarkably cried. I didn't know vampires could cry.
That
when,
scene.
when the master puked up all of his worms into Bolivar instead of Icorst.
First of all, that was right out of The Bachelor. That scene. I mean, right down to the staging, where Icorst was sitting there waiting for it, and then he opens his eyes, and the master has chosen Bolivar. Like, he might as well just given Bolivar a rose.
Oh, man.
That was full on master. Also, there was like a weird, like, sexual undertone to that scene, like sort of like an upsetting sexual undertone, because the way Icarus was like on his knees, like give it to me.
Yeah. No.
And like just the act of like vomiting in the face of the guy, like it was just a weird scene.
Yeah, it's got a very strange sexual but non-sexy undertone. I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, very strange stuff going on in that scene. But poor Icarus, man.
I know.
All he ever wanted, aside from exterminating the Jews, was to become the master.
I know.
And he was right there.
I know. He still got time to prove himself as some kind of crazy, weird vampire. Some kind. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like this was a real blow to his confidence.
It was. And who knows, maybe he'll turncoat. He doesn't turncoat in the books, but maybe he will, because like I think that would be really interesting way for the show to go. Especially because they've done so many new things. So
I would love it. I would love nothing. See, that my ideal fan fiction version of the show would be F becomes the master. And that angers Icarus so much because he got passed over that Icarus joins the resistance. And they switch places.
Kyle.
Come on.
Kyle.
Yes.
Do you realize that you are doing the same thing now to the strain that you and I do for Grimm?
100%, yes.
Okay.
You know what? I feel like that speaks well of the strain.
You know what? I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
Grimm is the kind of show that I feel like the strain kind of aspired to be, maybe accidentally, by the way, but where it's enjoyable. Now, obviously, like, one of them is like a crime procedural and very like low ambition, and the strain has much higher ambitions. But like, just in terms of like understanding what you are, like, Grimm is a show that we gleefully talk about because it's very silly, but there's like something undeniably enjoyable about it, and we have a lot of fun with it, and we like to come up with theories and, you know, talk about characters and all of that. And the strain has largely been a kind of show that we couldn't really do that with because there was so much that just made us mad about it that we couldn't really have fun with it in that way. Right. And so I feel like this is kind of like a breakthrough where we're actually having fun with the strain.
I approve. Yeah. I'm excited. I want to start fanficking about it.
I know.
For our audience members who don't know, Kyle and I do a podcast called Monroe's Comfy Sweater, which is a Grimm podcast.
We sometimes do a podcast called Monroe's Comfy Sweater.
That's true. We've fallen off the wagon a couple of times.
Like once every half season.
Yes. We did it for 2 seasons straight. We were strong for 2 seasons straight. It was last season where it was like a little...
Fell off a bit.
Because
we started other podcasts.
Exactly. We started other podcasts. And our listeners on the strain wanted to hear more about the strain.
Hey, we give the people what they want.
Exactly. But basically the reason we started Monroe's Comfy Sweater was because we would call each other every week after Grimm, and we would talk about the episodes, and then we would fanfic about them.
Yeah. About what we think should have happened. Yes,
exactly. So, which is sort of the way that we adoringly love our sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
So that speaks highly of the strain right now. I'm gonna say this is a good sign. This is a good sign.
Me too. I feel like we're headed in the right direction.
I agree. I'm totally on board. So we don't really have any wig talk or anything else. We're all ready?
Wig talk is retired. We still have some wigs on the show. There's still we didn't get a flashback to Abe, young Abe, which is our most prominent source of wig talk right now.
Bolivar took a wig off, like literally a wig.
True, yeah, right. That is an actual wig in the world of the show.
Yeah, that's a diegetic wig.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I assume that's gone forever. We're just losing wigs left and right.
I know.
The wigs are going away on the strain.
I know.
This season it's not humans versus vampires, it's humans versus wigs. And vampires, humans and vampires versus wigs.
That's what I was going to say there. It's vampires versus wigs too.
Yes.
All right. Well, this wraps up our 21st episode of the Strain podcast. Before we go, I want to mention a few things. You can download and subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You can also hear all of our podcasts at our website, southgatemediagroup.com. Please subscribe to the show and also rate us. Follow us on Twitter at @TheStrainPod and Kyle and I at @KyleLovesTV and @BlaireLovesTV. Remember, both Kyle and Blaire have an E at the end. Don't forget that we just started up a Facebook page where we're going to post our own memes and our own news and events. So check out our Facebook page, which is The Strain Podcast. Really easy. I think it's facebook.com/The Strain Podcast. Send us your fan mail at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, tvbinges.com, to join in our monthly binges and create your own. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.